This is the whale and lighthouse motif, and we'll begin painting this with the tropical set. You can mix your own colors if you'd like. Of course, this is an imagination piece, so you're welcome to paint anything as you would like. So I have this red mixed up here. This comes from this set. It's an extra. It's called Rome in my kit. You can mix your reds. These are a little bit on the pink side, so you can decide to mix other colors into your red or do a black and white lighthouse. This is the lighthouse from Hilton Head where I enjoy going, and so I'm going to come in here and leave a little bit of the white of the paper to give it a look as if there is a reflection here, and I can go back and fix that later if I'd like. And I'm planning this out so that the next one that's red is here, and I have no idea if that's exactly accurate to the lighthouse there, but it is a red and white lighthouse, and I took this drawing, the sketch from the likeness of Hilton Head because I enjoy it so much there. Okay, so I'll clear my brush here, and I've got a little bit of black here. You can mix up your own black by using ocean and this orange or hibiscus in this kit, but you can mix your own black or have yours handy from your kit. So you want to be careful along here so that you don't get that into the red you just painted. You might want to wait till it dries. I got mine in there a little bit, so I pulled it back with my paper towel. I'm adding that color back in right there. And I'll do a little bit of black on this roof, but like I said, you can paint it whatever color you'd like. They have this nice restaurant there that's actually more of a blue and white theme, so you could for sure pick whatever you would like if you want it to look a little more nautical. And this is just a reference I took from the internet, so it is not the actual restaurant in Hilton Head, but it's so super cute, and it's good as a reference to paint. Again, leaving that weight of the paper in here. It's so tiny, so you can take your time painting that. If you go out of the lines, you just clear your brush and take a little bit of water and a paper towel to carefully remove. And I'm going to make this door red as well. I'm just using the very teeny tiny tip of my brush. Now, if I make this into an 8x10, it'd be a little bit easier to paint those areas because they won't be so teeny tiny. Adding some pigment there. Get it a little bit more saturated so it doesn't look pink because of the white of the paper won't be showing through. And I've got this little palm tree, so I'll just take a bright green here. If you need to brighten yours up, mix a little yellow into your green. And do the trunk of that palm tree like so. I'm going to come here and take this little railing along there, paint that in, and these shutters, I just did black. I'll come in and kind of do the stucco a little bit more gray and a little bit after that has dried. And over here I have like a window at the bottom of the lighthouse. So after those shutters are dry, you can put the glass in there. Very light, faint blue color. So I've got the basics of that. Now I want to come in here and do my whale on the top in this kind of blue. I picked a turquoise blue, and you'll have like a little piece of paper in your Take and Paint where you can test out your colors like I did earlier to figure out what I wanted to do for different parts of my whale. So I've got that there as a reference. And I'm going to start with this tail and just kind of go along some of the edge. I'm going to leave the white of the paper in there for a minute to give it a little bit of texture and dimension. This is a little bit more pigmented than my original that I have online as an example, so you can choose. You could also make it more of a darker blue or gray, but obviously this is not an accurate whale, so you can make it whatever you want. And I'm kind of just going around some of those areas for the flowers. I don't want my lines to be super distinct, but it's okay if it touches just a little bit. We'll wait on that to dry later, or go back and do that later. And I'm putting just a light touch of pigment in there. That'll make it easier to go around. And I'm just using the tip of my brush with a little bit of pressure. I'm using these water brushes, so not using that base of the brush as much, just to control the water. There's more pigment always at the very tip of the brush where it loads up with pigment. And come in here where it's a little darker and start just kind of moving some of that pigment around. You can take it off with a paper towel if you ever need to, or you can just kind of lift it and move it to another area just to conserve the pigment. And now I'm going to just kind of dab in a little bit more here, give it sort of a little bit of definition and shadow along the top here. And I don't want that to be a line, so I'll come in and after I've cleared my brush and kind of move some of that pigment around like so. Now up here in this tail, I don't want it to be quite white, but it's dried with that pigmentation around some of the white areas. So I'm going to just lightly take a clear brush over that so that can keep the texture but take the white down a few notches like so. And here I'm going to leave that a little darker, and always make sure you mix up what you think is enough paint so that you can get whatever you've got in your drawing. You'd have enough of it. The whale has more color than maybe say that red, so you're going to make sure to make enough. And let's just come in here around this eye. And I like how some of these minerals are pooling here, making a nice watery texture. Over here I have, not sure if you can see that, but I've got a little bit out of the line. So I'm going to go in with a clear brush and just pull that back like so. I've got some over here that I just noticed. I'll do the same thing there. And I'll take a little bit of this because it'll be a different color. I'm going to leave that white, so I don't want any blue in there. Okay, now in my original I have like kind of a tan color here. So I'm going to go and I tested out the color here. That's what I want. It's really from this upper portion here that has a little bit of this tiki brown, a little bit of yellow, and a little bit of black in here, just to give it a nice sort of tan look. And I'm really spreading that pigment around so that it's not very dark. I want it to be very nice and light and airy. And I'm trying not to get it on the flowers because that'll add a kind of a dingy base to it. So of course I want to keep it white, so when I add that color on the flowers, it will be more vibrant than if I covered that up. Whoops. And even here, I kind of put too much on and just tap that back. In the green, it wouldn't matter as much where there's leaves, but for the flower part, I don't want the brown underneath there as a layer. Take the tip of the brush and just kind of, while it's wet, sort of get into those smaller spaces. You know, when you're looking down it from a distance, you won't really see any spots that you missed, but okay. And now I'm going to go along this edge and kind of add a little bit of a darker pigment. And because it's wet, you saw it's kind of spreading a little bit, which is nice because then it doesn't end up with a line like this over here. So I'm going to flood that with a little bit of water just to tone that down a little bit. I'll probably go back in and add a little more in a second. And so I did kind of a rosy tan color. Let me see if I can make that up for these little flowers. Yeah, like that. You'd really want to wait until the background is dry so that it doesn't combine. Some are lighter, some are darker. Okay. See, it's kind of just popping up as a bubble, so I'm adding a little bit more pigment into that, and I can always go back and fix that later. So I see around my eye where some of that pigment pulled and the motion of my brush. So I'm just going to take a clear brush and kind of move that pigment so it's not in that crescent shape along there. And now I'm going to kind of got rid of a lot of my brown over here, so kind of mix a little bit more up and just tap in. Now that it's a little more dry, it's not traveling quite as much along there. And then now for the stems, or the leaves and stems, I'm going to add green with a little bit of brown just to deepen that color a bit. This palette's pretty vibrant. Okay, so that's still pretty wet. You would want that to dry a bit. Before doing this part, I'll go everywhere. You see where it popped into that flower. But for the sake of my time and showing you how to do it, I'm just going to go along here as best I can. But when you're doing this at home, you would definitely want to wait so you don't have a giant mess on your hands. As you get more steady, you can stay in those spots much more easily. Following some of those stems. Okay, and now we have these little flowers up here, so didn't really put a lot of detail into these, but you can just tap in a little bit or just kind of leave it very indescript. I'm going to put a little bit of plant life around that. And maybe make it a little bit more of a shadowy blue here to come along this area to make it look rounded across the top. And I'll probably pull from the same color here and just pop in a few flowers. My original, I think they're just kind of blue. So you can do that. Or if you don't want it to have so much pop, you can take a neutral here. All right. So now I'm going to put a little bit of shade and shadow into this lighthouse, and try not to put my hand in my drawing here, and just kind of add a little bit of gray along here. It's so small, so you really don't have to go in and do this, but it's a nice little detail. And I might go along my roof and just kind of add a little bit of gray in there.